Hey everyone. Today I wanted to share a message about my experience over the last 2 years in marriage ministry, over the hundreds of marriages that I have ministered to and helped, and all the stories that I have heard. And I'm telling you, I am no longer surprised. The number one common denominator of all of the women, all across the board, every single one of them, before they married their husband, they all slept with their husbands, okay, before marriage. And two, nobody asked God, do you want me to be with this person? Yes or no? I'm not going to judge them because I was in the same exact boat as all of them. And look at my marriage in 2023, it came under attack. Remember, just because you go to church every Sunday and read occasionally and pray occasionally, that does not mean anything. If you're just a believer, but you're not a follower. A follower does things aligned with God. A believer just says, oh, I know that God is real and I believe in God. But a follower lives their life aligned with God, with purpose, and tries to please Him with their decisions in their life. So that's the biggest mistake that a lot of the sisters came across, was all they had to hear from their husband was that he believed in God, and that was it. That was enough. Now, many of them had red flags, okay, but they ignored the red flags because of, they already slept together, or two, the soul tie, right? The ungodly soul tie. When you sleep with someone outside of marriage, now you have an ungodly soul tie, and no matter how bad they are, you can't leave them. Every single one in my ministry that I ministered to, their husbands cheated. Every single one of them. But why are you surprised? You just got with a believer, not a follower, because a godly man does not cheat. And all of them, every single one of them, the sisters, none of them was following God either. And so they're like, oh, but we went to church every once in a while, and we prayed every once in a while, and we read every once in a while. Well, guess what? Then God's only in your life once in a while. Once in a while is not strong enough to come against the devil. And that's why their marriage fell apart, because they were not built on a rock, the rock of Jesus. They were built on sand. Another thing too is the husbands try to come up with an excuse as, oh, you never submitted to me, you don't listen to me, you do whatever you want, you undermine me, you make me feel like I'm not good enough, or I'm not a man enough, so that's why they cheated. That's all excuses. The Bible says for the women to submit to their husbands the way we submit to God. That's another issue that a lot of the women have, is not being able to submit. But how can you submit to someone who's blind? That's the blind leading the blind. That's why the women don't feel safe enough to follow their husband, because it's like, you're drowning. Why am I going to follow you to drown as well? But the men automatically think that just because I'm a man, my wife better submit to me. But it also says in Ephesians 5 man. That is very rare to find a Ephesians 5 man. It says that a husband, he gives up his life for his wife the way Jesus gave up his life for us. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you used to be a player, a flirt, a cheater, sleep around, you give that up. You die to that. You die to your flesh. The way Jesus died for us, a man needs to die to those things. If you used to love gaming, then you need to die to that as well. Now, that doesn't mean you don't play it at all, but you should not be playing it so much that your wife is a single wife. Like, she's married to you, but she's practically single because she's doing everything and taking care of the children by herself. That's called a single wife. If you used to love to drink and smoke and do drugs, you need to die to that, especially to substance. You do need to die to that, because the God says He wants us to have a clear mind, to not be a drunkard. He wants us to be reliant only on Him and not substance. But these men get it wrong. You need to submit to me. You need to listen to me. But how can the women listen to you when you are leading them to drown? So in my ministry, I never say I will help you get your husband back. I have seen other ministries where they guarantee that. That's how you know that's false. Because there's nothing that I can ever do to get their husbands back. All I do is plant a seed. And all I do is testify what God did for me and what I did along the way. And my biggest and number one purpose is to bring you back to God. Realign you back to God. Get you off all those crazy paths and bring you back to the narrow, straight path that leads straight to God. There are some marriages that God will save, and there are some that will not. And it's not that God says, okay, I don't want you and you together. It really comes down to the individuals, the couple. One changes and the other will not. And so that's what happens. When one changes and becomes the godly woman, or I do minister to men, if a man changes and becomes godly, or if a woman changes and becomes a godly woman, then now their spouse must also change to become their equal. Does that make sense? No marriage will ever work being unequally yoked. One is strong and the other one's not. One's a believer and the other one isn't. So when you change and you grow closer to God, now your spouse either is going to have to change to match you, or God will remove them and put someone who deserves to be with you and equal with you. Remember that the dangerous prayer that I said, I prayed and I had asked God, like, okay, if you don't want me to be if you don't want me to be with my husband and I'm not the one for him, then don't let him be with that witch, because he deserves better. So I asked God, please then bless him with a woman who loves you so much, God, and who will love him the same and keep him close to you. And instead of God giving my husband a new woman, he changed me into a new woman. So in my ministry, what I always tell them is you have to change first. You can't expect your husband to change and you're still the same. I have come across quite a few women that only changed so they can trick their husband that, they changed and they're kind and they're sweet and they're submissive now. So the husbands come back and then bam, they forget about God and bam, the marriage falls apart again. There is such a thing as a false restoration, meaning like the work wasn't done in you or in your husband, but you manipulated the situation for you guys to come back together sooner than what God has intended, and then because it's faulty, the marriage falls apart again, and that's not restoration. What God restores, He says it. Whatever I put together, no one will ever pull apart. So that is my advice for those who are married, those who are single, dating, engaged, and who are struggling is, I know you want your spouse to change, but you have to be the change first and get right with God and stay that way and finally submit your life. And it's not just a, part-time thing. You need to be full-time with God so God can be full-time with you, because halfway with God will only get you halfway to heaven, and your marriage will always be halfway or less, and it will never be full, and you will always feel empty. Until next time, God bless. Bye-bye.